Alright, so you want to make music with your computer. What now? Okay, so this video is probably going to be somewhat long, especially in comparison to my normal videos, but I'm going to try and split it up into different sections, which are going to be highlighted down on the timeline below. There's also going to be links to all the different sections as timestamps down in the description. I really just want this video to function as like a basic guide for beginners, like something that I wish that I had when I had started making music. Also, throughout the video, I'll probably just be referring to music made on your computer as electronic music. This information doesn't only apply to the normal definition of electronic music though, it's just easier for me to call it that. This information is just as valid if you're recording acoustic guitar covers on a $10 mic in GarageBand on your iPhone. Sweet, so let's get into it. I find that one of the most discouraging things for me when I'm trying to pick up a new hobby or skill is that the people in that community already have their own set of common terms and phrases that make little to no sense to me and everyone else outside of that community. So in this part of the video, I'm going to try and explain some of the most frequently used terms and phrases in the electronic music making community. There are going to be a lot that I don't cover though, and any that I can think of that I don't cover in this section will be down below in a Google Docs sheet linked in the description, along with all the ones I do cover, so feel free to reference that. Also, these definitions are in no way meant to be complete or fully explained definitions for the sake of simplicity and helping beginners better understand. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask down below in the comments or research any topic on your own. A DAW or digital audio workstation is whatever software you use to make music. For example, GarageBand is a DAW. Other popular examples you may have heard of are Ableton Live, FL Studio, Cubase, Reaper, Logic, etc. MIDI or musical instrument digital interface is essentially sheet music for computers. So like, you know how if you hand someone a piece of sheet music without any instruments, they can't really do anything with the sheet music? It's the same for computers. So MIDI clips themselves don't make any sound and store no audio, but what they do store is information like notes, note length, note velocity, any pitch bends a note may have, that sort of stuff. A VST, or virtual studio technology, is any instrument or effect used in a DAW. For example, the piano instrument you add to your MIDI clip is a VST, and the reverb effect you add to the piano so it makes it sound like it's in a big room is also a VST. Most DAWs come with a lot of VSTs built in, like instruments, effects, synths, etc., but you can also download VST plugins online. The VSTs that come with a DAW are usually just referred to as stock plugins, while downloaded VSTs are called plugins or VST plugins. Acoustic simply means not electronically or electrically created or amplified. So most physical instruments are acoustic by nature, but electric guitars are one example that are not acoustic because they're amplified electrically. Acoustic is also a genre of music, and it's just music that's mostly made from acoustic instruments. Thinking Out Loud by Ed Sheeran and Hurt by Johnny Cash being two examples of music in the acoustic genre. Quantization is just the process of aligning notes to a grid. So most Western music is in the time signature of 4/4, meaning that there are 4 beats per measure, and these beats can be made smaller or stretched out. Quantization means that if I play a drum rhythm, I can quantize them and lock them into the grid so that they're now more on time. A piano roll is really just a DAW's way of showing all the notes available to be played on a time-based system. So these black and white keys here on the side represent each note that can be played, and the grid spaces represent when in time the notes will be played. Mixing is, in its simplest form, just making all the individual parts and pieces of a song sound better in the context of all the other parts and pieces. Mastering, on the other hand, is, in its simplest form, adjusting the whole song to sound better altogether. While mixing is happening all during the process of making a song, mastering usually only happens at the end and is usually done to the full exported track. Compression in music refers to the process of lessening the dynamic range between different parts of audio. So if you had a clip where you're screaming 1 second followed by whispering another, a compressor would compress the audio so the parts wouldn't be as different in terms of their loudness. Compression can be a really complicated and confusing thing to explain, especially for beginners, so please check out this video if you want to know more. A one-shot is typically just a short piece of audio that's not intended to be looped seamlessly, like a single snare hit or a kick, etc. The click simply refers to the digital metronome. A metronome is just a tool used to help keep steady time when creating or recording music. BPM, or beats per minute, is just the tempo of a track played by the metronome. An audio interface, often just called an interface, is a piece of hardware that connects physical forms of audio to digital ones. For example, you can't usually just plug in an electric guitar straight into your computer. You'd have to plug in the guitar to an interface and then plug the interface into the computer to be able to record the information sent from the guitar into the computer. An EQ or equalizer is an audio effect that's used to boost and reduce certain frequencies and frequency ranges. For example, if I have this guitar sample that has a lot of sound coming from the lower frequencies, I can use an EQ to reduce those frequencies so that only the higher frequencies are prominent. Bouncing a track is when it's exported with all the effects and automation on it. For example, if I have a vocal track with a bunch of auto-tune and reverb effects on it and I bounce it out, that would mean that I'm left with just one flattened track with no effects that I can interact with on it, since it's been flattened down into one layer. Great, so you know what a DAW is now, but how do you choose one? So there are a handful of popular DAWs out there and dozens of less popular ones that you can pick from. But when it really comes down to it, the decision is totally up to you. The first tip I always give people when they're trying to figure out which DAW they should use is to try out the ones that they're considering. A lot of the popular DAWs have free trial options, which can really help you get a feel for what they're like. But be sure to not let trying them out discourage you. Learning a new DAW is like learning a new instrument. It can often be very overwhelming and confusing, especially when you're just getting started. Another thing to consider is price. While some DAWs are just a straight up one-time price for the full package, a lot split the price into a few tiers. Ableton and FL Studio, for example, split the price into 3 different tiers, with each being more expensive than the previous tier but offering a lot more content. Personally, I use Ableton Live and I first bought the intro version, and as I continue to learn and want more options, I purchased the next 2 tiers one at a time. What's nice about this sort of progression is that typically the price for the next version up is reduced when you buy the version below it. For example, buying the intro version of Ableton cost me $99, and then typically to just buy standard it would cost $499, but since I had already purchased the intro version, the upgrade only cost me $399. So if you've tried out some DAWs and evaluated the pricing options and are still stuck between a few, sometimes it's best to look around you. For me, picking Ableton was the clearest option because it's what I actually learned on in school, so I already had the experience with it. But I know this probably isn't the case for everyone, so looking around you can just mean seeing what your friends or anyone you know uses. Having someone that you know who uses the same DAW as you can really be a big help in the learning process. So if all your friends use FL Studio and you get Ableton, you're really just limiting the number of people you know that could potentially help you. And if you don't know anyone who makes electronic music or uses a DAW, just go to YouTube. Find a creator that you like who makes good videos using their DAW and just try out the one that they have. So far, I've only really talked about the paid DAWs, but they aren't the only one. While they're typically better in the fact that they offer a lot more content than the free ones, there's some totally free DAWs that are great for getting started if you can't afford / don't want to commit yet to buying a paid DAW. GarageBand is where a lot of people start, and some people even stay. Joji, for example, uses GarageBand for all his songs to this day.
Are you still straight GarageBand?
Yeah. Yeah, still straight GarageBand.
I don't know how you do it. You have the hottest GarageBand beats of anyone I know. I swear to God. Bro, it goes to show. I hate whenever kids start talking about like, oh, you need this equipment, oh, you need this drum kit, da-da-da. I'm like, Joji's making heat in GarageBand. You really don't need honestly.
There are a lot of online DAWs that are also free to use, like Soundation. Soundation is actually the first DAW that I used when I was first trying to understand music making. It's since had a lot of improvement and now even has a monthly subscription option alongside the free version. Great, so you know your terms, you chose the DAW just for you, but now you see everyone using these fancy keyboards and synthesizers. What's up with those? So when it comes to electronic music, there are 2 main classifications for different keyboards, no matter the shape or size. There are MIDI controllers and there are synths. MIDI controllers just control MIDI. So like previously mentioned with MIDI, that means that they don't have any sound or audio built into them. They're just a blank sheet music writer that still need an instrument to make sound. Meaning that unless you have them plugged into a computer or something else that you can assign a VST to the MIDI controller, you're not going to get any sound. Synthesizers, on the other hand, make their own sound. You don't need to plug them into a computer or assign a VST instrument to them to get sound. Synths are therefore typically more expensive than MIDI controllers, but it really just depends on the synth and it depends on the MIDI controller. But both come in various shapes and sizes, and neither are required to make music. I have like 3 or 4 MIDI controllers and some old Yamaha and Casio keyboard synthesizers, but most of the time, I just use my computer keyboard as a MIDI controller when I'm making music. And that's just something that most DAWs support. But if you're someone who's classically trained on piano or you just want bigger pads to hit when you play your drum rhythms, MIDI controllers can be a great option. Also, something to consider is that a lot of MIDI controllers come with free downloads for DAWs. I know that when I first got my Launchpad, it came with a code for a free version of Ableton Live 9 Intro, so if you know you're going to want a MIDI controller, getting one that comes with the DAW could be a great investment. Besides MIDI controllers and synths, there's a ton of hardware out there like audio interfaces, microphones, modular synthesizers, contact mics, the list goes on. But again, these aren't required for making music, they can just help in the process depending on the person and make things a lot easier.
I hate whenever kids start talking about like, oh, you need this equipment, oh, you need this drum kit, da-da-da. I'm like, Joji's making heat in GarageBand. You really don't need honestly.
But it really just depends on the person and what kind of music you're making. Like mics can really help some people, but are totally useless for other people. Honestly, I don't have enough knowledge or experience to talk about a dozen different mics and which one's better than which. Personally, I use a Blue Yeti Blackout Edition USB mic, which may not be the best, but I do believe that as long as you know how to mix vocals, the mic can only do so much. And I know that with my music, I put so many effects on my vocals, I can usually cover up the less than perfect audio that it records. With all that being said, here's some great videos on how to choose a mic if that is something that you want, and then how to mix your vocals better. And as always, the links to these will be down in the description as well. Sweet, so you've got your DAW, you know your terms, you got any hardware you want, and you're ready to go. But now you're probably wondering, how the hell do I use this alien piece of technology with a million buttons that keeps making sound at me? There are so many ways to learn a DAW. Online courses like Skillshare, in-person classes, reading books, jumping straight in and trying things till they work, watching 4-hour YouTube tutorials that cover every tiny feature of your DAW, and these are all really great and valid ways to learn, and depending on the person, can have varying degrees of success. But I always like to preach the value of learning by watching videos of people making music. These videos don't even have to be intentionally educational. I can't even tell you how much I've learned just from watching 10-minute videos of guys making type beats on their 2014 Toshiba laptops using a pirated version of FL Studio. Personally, I was always discouraged watching the long tutorials or reading the thick books on how to make electronic music because they made me feel like I didn't know anything and I had so much more to learn. But watching entertaining videos where some guy makes a song only using tire sounds really did teach me a lot without making me feel like I didn't know anything and I had so much to learn. And again, this isn't to say that long tutorials or books aren't super valuable resources. I've definitely learned a lot from those too. I just hate to see people feeling discouraged, thinking that that's the only way to learn when it very much isn't. So there are thousands of great channels out there and dozens that I'm probably subscribed to, but here are some really exceptional ones that I love. Ramzoid makes short but fun videos with creative and interesting concepts. Andrew Huang is very knowledgeable and has a good mix between educational and entertaining content. Adam Neely is more music theory focused but has great video essays on different music related topics. Composerly makes short-form, meme-based music-making videos with a great How to Sound Like series. Dylan Tallchief is super chill and has style recreations and genre breakdowns mixed in with technically focused videos. Imagining Ambition has more entertainment-focused skits based on artist and style recreations. Levi Niha is really laid back and has fun music creation videos with really unique ideas. Music by Blanks has some fun remixes and original music-making videos with a lot of personality. Praxi Plays has some great artist-focused breakdowns and style recreations, and Aces to Aces has some short-form and fun, genre-based breakdowns. But if you're someone who's more into watching live streams, there are some great live streamers out there as well. One of the benefits of watching live streams is being able to watch a more in-depth process of how songs are made, so here are a few streamers that I particularly enjoy. Medicine has some great laid-back beat-making live streams. Kenny Beats is very frequent with his live streaming and has weekly beat-making contests and a lot of community engagement and interaction with some really great special guests. Vectroid has a mix between music making and gaming streams with a pretty small community but great community interaction. And my friend Will Kuhn just started streaming but makes weekly Sunday streams focused on teaching teachers how to teach electronic music, but there's still a lot of great advice and tips for everyone. And I mentioned him before, but Ramzoid also streams and has some great laid-back beat-making live streams. And as always, links to these amazing creators are going to be down in the description. Be sure to comment any that you love that I missed. At this point, you're hopefully making some sound with your DAW, or you at least have a better understanding of what you're about to get yourself into. But as you're learning and making some sick lo-fi beats to study/relax to, here are some general tips and pieces of advice that I feel didn't fit into their own section but still wanted to share. Personally, I try and listen to new music every day. I find that being surrounded by a ton of different styles and genres and sounds really helps me get new ideas and create things that sound unique. Also, sometimes if I have an idea for a song but I really don't know where to start, I'll just make a playlist of a bunch of songs that all have some element of what I want to be captured in my song to help me get inspired. I try and keep this playlist pretty long but not too long and capture various genres and styles so that my song doesn't only get inspiration from one or two songs and get stuck sounding derivative. Have a dumb idea for a song but you think it's too weird or stupid? Do it anyways. The most unique ideas you have often stem from your dumbest. I had an idea for a song that started out like a lo-fi chill hop station and ended up with a future-based sax solo section, and I did it. It was one of the dumbest ideas that I had, but I feel like it turned into one of my most unique creative songs. I just had the stupid idea and I went with it. You don't learn anything by making the same 3 trap beats with guitar samples. Make your dumb ideas. It can be really stressful seeing 12-year-old kids making music that you wish you could make someday. But that's okay. Everyone's on their own schedule. Jay-Z didn't even release his first album until he was 26. And even if you're 80 years old, you can still learn something new and make music at your own pace. Okay, this one's less of an inspirational moment, but I do want to talk about Splice for a second. Splice is a monthly subscription-based service for getting samples, loops, etc. And I know a lot of people talk trash on Splice and a lot of people love it. The issue that I see most people having with Splice is that the same 20 samples just get used by everyone, and it limits the creativity in the fact that everyone's music ends up sounding similar. And while I do find that aspect annoying, Splice can be a really valuable tool if you use it correctly. I find a lot of great drum one-shots and weird samples and sounds from Splice. And another great thing about Splice is that it supports the creators when you download their samples. Some of my favorite producers who have sample packs on Splice are Andrew Huang, Medicine, Umru, Nick Dean, The Count, Ramzoid, Igloo Ghost, and Louis Vuitton. What you use to listen to the music that you're making really does have a big impact. If you're trying to make your song sound good on $5 headphones, you'll quickly realize that as soon as you export it and listen on any other speakers or headphones, it's probably going to sound a lot different and probably a lot worse. Personally, I use Audio-Technica ATH M30X Studio Monitor headphones. Studio Monitor just means that they're not boosting any frequencies. A lot of headphones and speakers for general listening boost certain frequencies and frequency ranges, typically bass, which really just makes it hard to get the music sound the way that you want across different speakers. And the ones that I use aren't super expensive, but they're definitely not the cheapest. But for good quality, you do have to pay more. And if you can't afford headphones or speakers, use what you have. But be sure to listen to what you're making on multiple different speakers and headphones. When I'm making a song, I usually listen through my headphones, laptop speakers, car speakers, phone speakers, and whatever other speakers or headphones I have, just so I can make adjustments so that no matter where people are listening, the song's still gonna sound good. And really, the more you make, the more comfortable you'll get at knowing what's gonna sound good in different speakers. Finding a community of artists and music lovers is such a great tool. It really helps you learn and grow and hear new sounds and styles that you may have never heard. You might find this community in person, through online forums like Reddit, in YouTube comments, or wherever. And there are so many different places, especially with the internet nowadays. For the last real part of the video, I asked my friends who've been making music for a while what's something they wish they knew when they first started making music, and I gathered their responses to share. My friend Ethan said, "I wish I had someone explain audio interfaces and plugins and how easy they are to just plug and play. It took me so long to try and figure out how to record into my computer. I thought I'd have to buy a mic setup and a mixer and all this, but you really just need like your instrument, your DAW, and a plugin if you really want. Like it's really not that hard to get started. There's just a lot of different information out there that makes it more confusing." My friend Kenneth said, "Well, for starters, I wish someone would have explained the idea of corrective before creative, where you make it sound right before you add more." And my friend Sky said, "I learned from people when first writing about the importance of tempo. Very simple, but it makes all the difference." And my friend Will gave advice for performers, saying that you don't need to be an extrovert to be on stage. And lastly, my good friend Olivia said, "I've been thinking about what I wish I knew for quite a bit, and I keep circling back to the idea that it takes time to find your voice. The way I wrote back when I first started and the subject matter I leaned into is much different than it was by the time I was 18, let alone nearing 21. It takes time to evolve and you have to experiment, practice, engage, and thoughtfully outwardly express the way you see the world. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a much more conscious effort to nail down than I first initially realized, but I'd say that the extra effort is totally worth it and it helps to carve out the artist as an individual. Also, I would have loved to hear that creative slumps and writer's block can sometimes be a good thing if you continue to put in the work. That time can allow you to settle into your growing voice and help you return to your craft with a better understanding of what it is you really want to say." I really hope this video has been at least somewhat helpful for you and has taught you some new things about making music. The hardest part about it is the same as it is for learning most new creative things, and it's the fact that you just have to keep doing it. My personal motto in the matter is keep making and I mean that in two ways. One being keep making things. Keep making whatever it is you're making and you will get better. The second meaning is quite literally keep making Keep making all the bad songs and bad ideas you have, because that's really the best way to learn. I want to end out the video on this quote from Ear Glass that I've seen around a few times, and I think it's super encouraging for beginners. Nobody tells this to people who are beginners, and I wish someone had told me. All of us who do creative work, we get into it because we have good taste, but there's this gap. For the first couple of years you make stuff, it's just not that good. It's trying to be good. It has potential, but it's not. But your taste, the thing that got you into the game, is still killer, and your taste is why your work disappoints you. And a lot of people never get past this phase. They quit. Most people I know who do interesting creative work went through years of this. We know our work doesn't have this special thing that we want it to have. We all go through this. And if you're just starting out or you're still in this phase, you gotta know that it's normal and that the most important thing you can do is a lot of work. Put yourself on a deadline so that every week you finish one story. It's only by going through a volume of work that you'll close the gap, and your work will be as good as your ambitions. And I took longer to figure out how to do this than anyone I've ever met. It's gonna take a while. It's normal to take a while. You've just gotta fight your way through it. Thank you all so much for watching. Again, I hope you've learned something new, and I really do wish you the best of luck if you're just starting out making music or even if you've been at it for a while. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas for future videos, please let me know down in the comments. I'll be replying to everyone down there. So take care, keep making